So, I wrote these first parts of the video last year, and you could say in the 6 months that have followed, my video quality has increased. Sorry in advance if any of these reviews are December standard. Rewatched is what I'm going to call a select few what have I been watching specials. They'll drop on certain events. I felt it was right to limit the selection this time around to shows I watched in the first and second videos, as well as any show I watched before those videos and didn't review. But in future, you could see shows like Domestic Girlfriend on here, which I refused to score on my first watch, or To Love-Ru, which I deemed not suitable to be in a video at the time. Though since then, I've reviewed Blade Dance The Elementalers, so I guess anything goes. But without further ado, commence the rewatching. Originally, when taking a look at the series, I looked at all the seasons at the same time. Safe to say, I didn't make that mistake again, just looking at the first season this time. It's interesting not having some of the key characters that we meet later in the series. However, the show is great from the first season. I can say there are some more dud episodes than later in the series, but it's still a good start for the show. I like Hayasaka and Kaguya's dynamic, as well as the more fierce contest between the student council members. The show follows the aforementioned student council, and specifically the romance between president and vice president. They follow the pattern of not wanting to admit they like the other, simply because the first to do so loses. From this, many comedic situations are created, making for an entertaining watch. I didn't notice as many references as I remember from the later seasons, so either there wasn't as many at the start of the series, or I just missed them. And I can be clueless at times, so it's totally possible that I missed them. I can talk about the nice art, animation, or voice acting, or the catchy openings and endings, but I think you can see all that. Originally, I scored the show out of 9, and despite my reviewing skills being bottom of the barrel, I think the score is pretty solid, and so I re-rated Kaguya-sama Love is War at a 9 out of 10. Last time, I said the name was hard to spell and that I was surprised I stuck the series out, which I'm gonna be honest, this was painless to rewatch. Unlike some of the other shows later, the Quintessential Quintuplets definitely grow on me over time. The story follows one Futuro and 5 siblings, who for much of their life were identical, but now all have certain traits and styles unique to themselves. With each of them failing, Futuro has to tutor them to pass. With the subsequent story about how he gets way over involved with their lives, and some of the girls start to have feelings for him. I definitely don't think it was the greatest season, but I could appreciate some of the smaller dialogue and scenes that I didn't the first time. A quick side note, I have started reading the manga for the series, but I haven't gone far, so I can't really speak on the story. Originally, I scored the Quintessential Quintuplets a 7 out of 10, but this time, thanks to some improvement, I scored the Quintessential Quintuplets an 8 out of 10. When I first looked at the show, I gave it an 8 out of 10, and called it a day, not elaborating on my opinions, as I knew the riskiness of ending up a weirdo. But I bought a Sagiri figure. So I am a weirdo! Anyway, I still surprisingly liked an overwhelming amount of the series. The animation was clean, the dialogue was entertaining, and I think they made the best they could using the story of the source material. The story follows Masamune and Sagiri, a couple of kids that live on their own. Masamune, a novel writer, struggles with quality but creates an insane quantity, pulling multiple all-nighters for project proposals. And Sagiri, despite being a complete shut-in, creates top-tier art under the name Eromanga Sensei. I also read the manga, and whilst it definitely contained more questionable content, I think it was a reasonable series. I also kinda like these type of shows where the protagonist picks their favorite girl. It lets me pick a girl and see her all the way through in the story. Now, in the show, they don't get to the finale, which definitely removes a bit of the impact of a story like this, but it obviously is showing where it's going. I think the only thing that can make this really uncomfortable is the relationship between Sagiri and Masamune. I don't really think there is a right way to do this kind of relationship, but I think it could have been done better. Overall, I think this is a case of a bad series that I enjoyed. I found it to be more rewatchable than Kaguya, funnily enough, but I definitely found Kaguya to be of more quality. Though I see Eromanga Sensei's many faults, I rate it at an improved 9 out of 10, and geez is that the hardest sentence I've had to say today. I think I found it. The perfect waifu. Oh wait, I've already reviewed this series. My dress-up darling follows Gojo, who happens to run a Hina doll shop with his dad. I find the Hina dolls kinda creepy, but okay. Who happens to run into Marin, who is looking to make a cosplay. Gojo, experienced in making tiny little versions of costumes, offers to lend a hand. And that's our plot, folks. It's heavily implied that Marin has a thing for Gojo, but how? The man's a literal goof. Maybe that's why everyone fell head over heels for Marin, as she's an otaku and will take anyone that's nice to her. I kid, but it's honestly nice to see this misfit couple work together, with Marin relying on Gojo for the costumes and Gojo creating a friendship. They happen to meet others along the way, with Gojo happy to help all that wish for his services. I will say that this kind of slice of life doesn't especially lend itself to a lengthy review though. I think the art style is fantastic and the soundtrack's pretty good, but other than that, I have nothing else to pile on to the matter. I don't think it matters as the show speaks for itself, which is why I wish to give My Dress Up Darling a 9 out of 10, which sounds like it should be impressive, but when it shares a rank with Eromanga Sensei, I'm not too sure. Looking at my spreadsheet, I gave this an 8 originally, and despite not putting scores in my videos until later, I definitely feel that this score is over where most would put it. But as a shitty romance fan, I eat this up for breakfast. Rent-A-Girlfriend follows the titular meathead Kazuya. After being heartbroken from a breakup, he meets up with the one and only Chizuru, who he rents for some reason, then chaos ensues. The cast is something you can either love or hate, and for the majority of the cast, hate is definitely the emotion brought to the forefront, with the evil Mami-chan and overly expressive Ruka, as well as the meathead, which I named earlier. I think the show captures its audience by the sheer absurdity of the characters' actions, and how it still manages to be entertaining despite the glaring faults. I think the show's art style is great, and with a complimentary opening that suits the show well. When looking at the faults, I could point out many, but sometimes the show's faults can add to its charm, which I think is the case here. Overall, I think I definitely watched this during my honeymoon period, which definitely affected my initial views, shown in my video, but I would like to rescore Rent-A-Girlfriend at a 7 out of 10.
Oh, Kazuya, やっと繋がったか。
病室ネット通ったんだ。
Wi-Fi 月額980円。えらい出費じゃ。
本当のこと言わねえと。
So, last time, I can sum up my review into 2 words. Was weird. Girlfriend is about Naoya and his unique romantic life, with Saki being grounded but is able to be convinced to go along with Naoya's weird ideas, and Nagisa just happy to be with Naoya no matter the compromise. There is also a third girl who uses the online username of Milika, and I will call her that because I don't remember her actual name. This was probably the most painful to rewatch so far, as a lot of the humor works on shock factor. But if you already know what's gonna happen, it's nowhere near as entertaining. Honestly, the whole time I was just screaming at how much of a meathead that Naoya was. The art style was at least nice to look at, with it using a mix of highlight colours and dull colours to make the characters pop out a bit more. The opening is fine, but definitely annoying when you've heard it 24 times from the show, not to mention however many times on AMQ too. The scores I have on my spreadsheet come from a bit after the first 2 videos, and upon reflection I scored it a 6 out of 10 the first time, and honestly speaking, that's about right, so I scored Girlfriend a 6 out of 10. Hey look, a new kid on the block. I watched this in what I would call my in-between days, so before I watched ReZero and Kaguya, but after my Family Guy and The Simpsons phase. I originally watched this dub too, which whilst I did watch the sub this time, I think both are valid ways to watch the show, and in some respects the dub does make more sense for Phoenix Wright, especially with the names, as for Phoenix Wright the names aren't directly translated. For example, Phoenix himself gets translated as Phoenix sometimes, Nick, which is his English nickname sometimes, and Naruhodo-kun, his Japanese name sometimes. Rinse and repeat for most of the characters. It might contribute to this for the longest time being the second lowest rated season of a show I've watched on my anime list, below Eromanga Sensei. I enjoyed the watch personally, especially compared to some of the other shows, but that might just be my inner Ace Attorney fan overlooking some things, like the plot, which has rookie lawyer Phoenix Wright going around fixing cases in what I would call an extreme legal system, with assistant Maya and mentor Mia helping him at various stages. I will say this covers the worst part of the plot, with the second half of the season looking at the cases in Justice for All, which is widely considered not just the worst game of the trilogy, but the whole series. I think it gets this as the first case is the second weakest, ahead of Dual Destinies, the second case is the highlight of the game in my opinion, the third case is widely considered to be the second weakest case of the series, ahead of the Bucky Wet trial in Spirit of Justice, and the final case is hit and miss, with it being a miss in my opinion. The first half of the season does make up for this in my opinion, with the Edgelord and Von Karma plot and the Steel Samurai case, with both showing off the highs of Ace Attorney regularly and in the anime format. Though considering there are 24 episodes, taking the whole season into account, there's definitely more average than good, but a 6.5 though, that's less than Akiba Maid War and Bang Dream. I feel like the season, despite having some shortcomings, was pretty decent, though I would recommend the dub for Ace Attorney. The voice actors do a pretty good job and is probably one of the only series I would say I prefer the dub. Not to mention the openings, inserts and endings all slap, and I almost prefer the anime's soundtrack to the video games. All this to say, I don't know why this didn't get more love. Again, call me an Ace Attorney simp or blinded by Phoenix's spiky hair, but I would say that the Ace Attorney anime is worth a 7 out of 10. It also wasn't a bad rewatch either. Well, that was a ride. Some decent rewatches and girlfriend. I enjoyed this a bit, though due to time and the fact that I don't want to rewatch everything on my list, at most I'll do these every 6 months, and I'll try for once a year. However, I can't promise anything, seeing as a 12 episode show is 4 hours in watch time and a 24 episode one double that. Either way, I hope this plays a good retrospective on both how my scores change over time and a contrast between my first episode and almost a year on from that. I would appreciate interacting with the video and or checking out my socials. It helps the channel grow and helps me know if I'm doing a good job. Either way, I would like to thank you all for watching and I'll see you all next time. Bye!